This House is in session. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, July 5th, 2022 to be confirmed.
Yeah, just that.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be confirmed.
He had his
The question is that the aforementioned minutes be confirmed. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby confirmed.
announcements by Your Honor the Speaker. Messages from Her Excellency the President. Petitions, papers.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am commanded to lay the Barbados Conference Services Limited Annual Report 2021. Also the Green Paper on the National Sports Policy and the Exchange Control Authorized Dealers and Depositories Amendment Order 2020.
Government notices, private members, government notices. Resolution.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to give notice of a resolution that Parliament, in accordance with Section 5 of the Crown Lands Vesting and Disposal Act, Cap 225, approve the vesting of the parcels of land situate at Sergeant's Village in the parish of Christchurch in this island, and more particularly described in the schedules, mainly for a public purpose, namely housing development. And also a resolution that Parliament, in accordance with Section 5 of the Crown Lands Vesting and Disposal Act, Cap 225, approve the vesting in the National Housing Corporation of the parcel of land, the property of the state, situate at Lancaster in the parish of St. James in this island, and more particularly described in the schedule for the provision of road access.
Private members' notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills.
Honourable Member St. James Central.
Mr. Speaker, sir, beg to move that the first reading of electric light and power, or give notice of the first, beg to move the first reading of electric light and power bill 2022.
Thank you.
Question is that the aforementioned bill be read the first time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it.
Statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of Standing Orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42, subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
The question is that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Government business, sir.
Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 4. In the name of the Honourable Minister in the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, to move the second reading of the Financial Services Commission Amendment Bill 2022.
Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I wish to ask for the Chair's permission to have this debate conducted as a cognate and to include item number 5 on the order paper as part of the debate, given the link, sir, between both bills.
The question is that order number 4 and number 5 be done as a cognate debate, given the fact that they're inextricably linked. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise this morning to share a few thoughts, sir, on not just what is before us, as the amendment suggests for order number 4 and 5, but really and truly, sir, just to give a little bit of context given the environment we are operating in. Now, Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, the Financial Services Commission, sir, came about as a result of the failure, sir, of the previous system, which the Office of the Supervisor of Insurance at the time, sir, there were regulatory breaches in its inability, sir, to be able to sufficiently monitor and to effectively, sir, determine what ought to have been a reasonable process for winding up what was then, sir, the CLICO debacle. And so the FSC was formed, sir, to try to ensure then that the regulatory environment upon which we've asked, sir, many Barbadians certainly to over the years, to be able to purchase whether it's insurance products, sir, pension plans, the credit union movement as we know it, sir, all of these were all governed by different specific acts and entities. And therefore the FSC was created in order to provide and to mobilize, if you like, in a much more efficient way, the resources of the regulatory environment to be able to ensure that the public can feel comforted that the system of regulation, sir, was efficient and will work in their interest, sir, in the country. And so, whilst that took place, sir, as you are well aware, we still came to office and found a situation, specifically, sir, as it relates to CLICO, still unresolved from what was then more than almost 10 years, sir. And the extent to which, again, not just from the perspective of regulation now, but really what was required to be able to bring some relief to those persons who were caught up with the demise of the CLICO debacle, the inability of the previous government, sir, to find a meaningful resolution to the best interests of the policyholders that were there. And therefore, we came to office, sir, with all of that and everything else that we were faced with. And therefore, we, in so doing, we recognized that there were some issues within the context of the way that the commission was structured. And we've undertaken quite a bit of internal review of the commission itself to make sure that not just that the commission, as it currently is structured and its mandate, but given the emergence of new technologies and products, sir, certainly in the last 10 years for sure, to make sure that our overall regulatory environment, Mr. Speaker, is fit for purpose and will be able to give Barbadians relative certainty with respect to how and what and who would be able to operate, which products, sir, would be able to be offered in the market space, because we believe, sir, that there is a role, not just from a regulatory perspective, but there's a role for certainly credit unions, insurance, and all the other range of financial products, sir, in the country to play a significant role in the recovery of the economy. And therefore, it is important that as we set about unleashing, for lack of a better term, sir, any new instruments into the marketplace, that we have the appropriate systems and structures in place at the Financial Services Authority, sir, in order for government to be able to move forward and act. And therefore, the amendments before the chamber, sir, are relatively straightforward in the context of what was required to be done from a legislative perspective. And one of the critical things that we did on coming to office and starting the Barbados Economic Recovery and Transformation Program was that at the time, the FSC was being financed directly from the budget, sir, of government. And we took a decision very early, sir, that the FSC, given its nature, given certainly what had happened with respect well, in response to the failure of CLECO, sir, that it was important that the FSC was put on its own financial standing, in much the same way, sir, that in a sense the central bank has its own budget in order to be able to make sure then that it can conduct the appropriate regulatory regulatory framework in the interest of the country. So that early decision, sir, meant that a number of fees were introduced with respect to the various financial institutions under the mandate of the FSC, in order to make sure then that the FSC, sir, was able to not rely on the government for financing on a year-to-year basis, and therefore allow it, sir, a little more flexibility with respect to its operations in order to make sure then that it can move forward with certainty. But what we also recognize, sir, is that the board of the FSC itself required a change of structure, in that the previous legislation created a little bit of uncertainty in relation to the fact that the constitution of the board, sir, which is the main thrust of order number 4, basically intimated, sir, that if a member of the commission, sir, resigned, got ill, or the like, then it potentially meant, sir, that the entity was not, the commission, sorry, was not legally constituted, which, as you would be aware, sir, really does not make sense, given that you wouldn't expect an institution such as that to have such an anomaly within it and not have it addressed. And therefore, part of the amendments that are here before the chamber today, sir, just simply relates to just regularizing and giving absolute certainty, sir, with respect to the structure of the commission, which would allow the commission to continue to function, sir, so that if somebody resigns, goes overseas, regrettably gets ill, or even passes away, sir, that the commission itself will still be duly constituted, but allow it to function until a replacement obviously is put in place, which will not affect in any way the issuance of licenses or the like, sir, or any decisions, for that matter, of the commission, in order to make sure then that it can move forward with certainty. But I want to take the opportunity this morning, sir, not just to indicate what these specific bills are here for, but I want to also speak to very quickly, sir, the fact that we are operating in an environment where we have seen quite a number of new innovations, sir, for what many may perceive to be financial instruments. A lot of persons have been asking in Barbados in relation to what is the government stance on cryptocurrencies and all of these fancy things, sir, that have seemingly would have taken the world by storm. And our position is quite simple, sir. And I think it is incumbent upon us to always understand and appreciate, sir, that I cannot tell you, sir, if you wanted to sell, if I wanted to purchase your vehicle, sir, from you, I cannot tell you, sir, what to accept as payment in exchange for the vehicle. In the same way, sir, as you can't tell me what I want to personally accept if you wanted to purchase my vehicle from me, sir. Now, in most jurisdictions, we all know what the concept of legal tender. And it is legal tender is, you know, the monetary instrument that we would use to exchange, which is commonly agreed across the board, which means that you can go anywhere, sir, and take that legal tender and purchase something with it. But over the last few years, sir, and I want to make it clear that there's a difference between legal tender and any investment that people may perceive in relation to the concept of cryptocurrencies, because there seems to be a lot of misunderstanding around the two. And therefore, because, sir, I may decide that I will accept, I might decide, sir, to accept a piece of paper called the Parliament of Barbados with a 50 on it, sir, or 100 on it, or even 1,000, or whatever I may choose to write on it, sir. If I brought this paper to you, sir, and said, this is what I want to pay you for your car, you're going to look at me strange because you know, sir, that you can't take this piece of paper anywhere and get the worth from any of the other members in this chamber or any other financial institution or supermarket or any person in the regular economy in order to get the value that you know that you should get. But there's nothing stopping you, sir, individually from accepting this piece of paper with $2 on it in exchange for the vehicle. But what becomes the problem, sir, is was individually we may each of us decide what we want to exchange for our property. The issue comes, sir, with respect to how the rest of the market perceives that specific transaction. Now, as we know, sir, in all jurisdictions, there are central banks who all have the responsibility, sir, of maintaining the money supply in the space in order to regulate the access to currency in whatever form you want, which must not be confused in any way, sir, with what people may regard as digital currencies or cryptocurrencies, which I hope I'll be able to clarify. So the substance of all of this, sir, comes down to what collectively, if 30 of us in here, sir, decided that we will each exchange among us pieces of paper with the Parliament of Barbados on it as currency, and you being the speaker, sir, you regulate how much currency the member for Christchurch Central may have vis-a-vis the amount of currency that the member for, Christchurch West might have a little more currency, sir, than Christchurch East Central. But
St. Michael South too.
And St. Michael South. But the reality, sir, is that there's a measure of regulation around what happens in this space. And normally, sir, and this is just to be absolutely clear, normally it means that I am producing something that you may need, and you may need something from another member in here, and the demand for that, for those goods or services, sir, is really what will drive the value of the very currency or the underlying payment structure that is there. It's quite straightforward. So if I'm doing well, meaning, sir, I'm producing more of these name tags here, sir, compared to the member for St. Michael's South, it means, sir, that obviously I need more cash, and therefore and therefore, sir, as a result, when I deposit, if you like, then I'm depositing cash based on the transactions that I undertook, which when I deposit into whatever bank account, whatever system it is, sir, I know that I have a deposit of X in there. And when I wake up tomorrow morning, sir, the deposit is still X unless some measure of interest or something, sir, is applied to it in order to make sure then that there's absolute certainty. When it comes to this idea now, sir, of cryptocurrency and these things, because I want to make it clear, sir, that when all of us deposit, when any of us would deposit money into any financial institution, sir, we don't expect that tomorrow morning when we wake up that somehow the value of those deposits have trebled or gone up or even gone down. Because, sir, you know, I know full well, sir, in my own case, that when you check your bank account, sir, and you see anything that is strange, you're gonna first try to find out what is going on with that. And therefore, you don't expect to see any variation, sir, in the value of the deposits or savings or whatever it is that you have in the financial instrument. But with cryptocurrency, sir, and the way that it has evolved over the last few years, again, sir, there seems to be a little bit of a misunderstanding. Because when you put money, sir, into an instrument, a security, if you like, you're investing in something. And when you invest in something, sir, it means that the company, whatever the underlying asset, sir, is, whatever that is, whether it's a good or a service, when you make an investment, sir, you're making an investment into something where you can tell and you can see and feel and touch almost, sir, what is happening, which then gives you the confidence to put your money, to continue to put your money into a company. That is the basic tenet of investment, sir, because you want to get a return on that investment. And you, sir, seeing that I am depositing monies for name tags, sir, and I am doing name tags for all the parliaments in the world, sir, or what conventions in the world, sir, you see growth potential, and therefore you take up a small amount, sir, and invest in me. And every quarter, sir, I'm showing you that my revenue is going up, which justifies the return investment back to you through dividends, because I've been able to take the investment that you have provided to me, sir, expanded, in either more supplies, more equipment to be able to keep up with the demand for name tags, for example, sir. And therefore, using that capital allows me then to do more and therefore get more revenue and repay you, sir, the investment that you have put into the operation in order to be able to move forward. With this cryptocurrency thing, sir, is almost like it's an imaginary world. And I say so because people need to appreciate and understand quite clearly, sir, that one, when it comes to regulation, sir, if anybody in here, sir, or in Barbados, wake up this morning and check their phone, sir, and check your bank balance, and suddenly your bank balance, sir, moved from the day before of $2,000 on it, and then this morning, sir, when you wake up, it's 0 or 100, you're going to ask some serious questions of the financial institution. Then you're going to ask some very serious questions, sir, of either the central bank or the FFC, sir, depending on where it is. And then, sir, finally, if you can't get those answers, you're going to come to the government and ask very serious questions about why it is that with either your deposits or your investment, for that matter, that you've had that experience. And the purpose of regulation, sir, and having an appropriate regulatory environment is to be able to help protect people. But with these digital currencies, don't let me say digital currencies, with these cryptocurrencies and the exchanges that we have seen multiplied and gotten quite popular, particularly amongst young people, one of the very critical things about these exchanges is that there is a lack of regulation surrounding these entities. Nobody can say definitively what it is they're putting the money into, sir. And therefore, to the extent that any regulator cannot, with any reason, indicate what is not just the purpose, but the mechanism through which these so-called investments are growing, sir, then it becomes pretty much a problem. Now, all during the pandemic, sir, we all heard about blessing circles and all of these things, sir, with respect to what was designed, sir, to try to extract from people in a very fraudulent way their hard-earned cash. And all I can say to Barbadians, sir, is that this government has taken a quite responsible approach to this idea of cryptocurrency, because we've asked every person who have come to Barbados to express interest in setting up here, we asked them quite simple, few simple questions, sir, because we need to know who are the principals involved, what is the underlying technology that you're using, and what are the assets that are going to back any instrument that we can allow Barbadians to put their money into. Now, the truth is, sir, there are some amongst us who are completely risk-averse. And, sir, for those persons who are completely risk-averse and don't really worry about whether they can lose a few thousand or a few million or whatever it is in your circumstance, even though you may be risk-averse, sir, the government still has a responsibility to make sure that anybody that is operating within the confines of Barbados that they are following the appropriate regulations, because we don't want people to necessarily play fast and loose with their money. And certainly we would never advise that. But by the same token, we must ensure that people are not taken advantage of in this country, particularly, sir, when it comes to matters that they don't want quite fully understand, and two, where the technology is moving so quickly that from a regulatory perspective, or even from an IT perspective, sir, that nobody can truly say, one, where this money is coming from, how is this appreciation being generated, because as we look around the world at the evolution of these platforms, sir, invariably the bottom drops out simply because you're not keeping pace with enough people coming in to put in money to demonstrate that the growth that somebody who might have gone in early have seen will continue to be there. And therefore, all around the world, sir, we are seeing instances where central banks and other regulators like the Financial Services Authority are now fining entities for illegally operating and providing these services within this space. And our perspective has always been, sir, that once we can understand very clearly and justify to any of our constituents, sir, why we would allow such an entity to operate within the space, and notwithstanding the application of the technologies are very useful, but what persons seem to be most attracted to, sir, is the so-called ease with which you can put some money onto a platform, and then you see that money notionally, sir, increase in value. But the problem always comes, sir, that when you see this increase in value, you still have to come back into the real world, sir, and buy something from somebody. So therefore, if I determine that I want to create something called Parliament Coin, sir, for example, the people outside of Parliament, sir, may or may not accept Parliament Coin as legitimate form of exchange, so that they could go down Broad Street, sir, or Swan Street, Marhill Street, sir, and play, buy some fruit, or do anything else that they may do in those spaces, sir. And therefore, it must be made absolutely clear, that in a rapidly evolving environment, sir, between the Financial Services Commission as well as the Central Bank, they have a responsibility, sir, to make sure that anybody who comes into this space, that one, they're fit and proper, and two, that they're not going to unleash any technology that will inadvertently, sir, take advantage of ordinary Barbadians, which then, sir, will see not just public outcry, but certainly because the outcry may be one thing, but what always is the concern, sir, is that the fallout that from a financial perspective, that is always the case, sir, when these types of schemes or systems go down. And by go down, I mean, sir, when they collapse, because the nature of the activity itself is not linked to any real activity. And so it is important that whilst we find the right balance, sir, with respect to regulation on these new instruments, that Barbadians also pay attention, sir, to where they put their money. Because if there's nobody that you can call, really, and ask a serious question about who is in charge of this entity, what is the underlying asset that is driving the performance of the entity, now I can only caution people, sir, to think carefully, very, very, very carefully about where you choose, sir, to put the little change that you may have extra to be able to deploy for the best uses, because we want to encourage investment. But we want to encourage investment, sir, that is responsible, both domestically, regionally, and even internationally. But we need to do it in a way, sir, that is as seamless as possible, but equally clearly understanding, sir, in the same way that with the executive flexible premium annuities, sir, that were being offered by CLICO, and the interest rates that were being offered at the time, which were not justifiable, all we're saying is that people must be, and I thank the Honourable Member for St. James Central for, again, launching the Financial Literacy Bureau. The FFC has a mandate as well through working with the various associations to enhance financial literacy. But it is important, sir, that these financial literacy programs ultimately gives enough information for an education, I should say, sir, that would allow people to start to do their own research. And I don't mean research in the context of what the type of research that people refer to during COVID, but literally asking the right people the right questions in order to get the responses that will allow them, sir, to decide whether or not they're going to take the risk in terms of investing in anything. And let me point out, sir, that there's always risk. No regulator, not the FFC, not the central bank, not the government, sir, can eliminate risk. But what is important is to understand that there's a framework within which one is operating. And as much as we would love to be able to unleash all of these nice, fancy things, sir, the reality is that if we do not take the time to understand who are the operators, what really is their intent, and put the systems in place such that any regulator or any citizen for that matter can have access to the appropriate information, sir, with respect to any financial service or product. It is critical that we create the environment that allows for relative certainty, as I said, sir, in terms of the institutions who are operating in the space, but giving the confidence, sir, to the average Barbadian that entities operating within the space are properly regulated, and we are moving, sir, to make sure that within the context of the insurance sector, the credit union sector, sir, the pension funds and cooperatives and the like, sir, that we have an institution which, quite frankly, sir, with the work that they've been doing with the central bank under the financial stability program, we have some very strong institutions who are well poised now, sir, to participate more fully in terms of building out the economy. But we must do so conscious that whilst people have grown accustomed to doing things a certain way, even within some of these institutions, that we are minded, sir, that as we go to a new phase, that we have to enhance, certainly, our approach to not just regulation, but how we govern ourselves. I will speak very quickly, sir, on this specific matter because I am aware, sir, that we have a very strong history in this country, certainly over the last 40 years of building out credit union sector, sir, that I think we can all be very, 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 very proud of. And it is one of the areas, sir, that is a shining light. But I wish to, at this point, sir, indicate that as credit unions get larger and larger and larger, sir, and we have seen that growth and we welcome that growth, and furthermore, sir, I would like that growth to even double in the shortest possible time in terms of the assets that they hold in the economy, helping to further empower ordinary Barbadians as they have, sir, over the past 40 years. We want the credit union sector to be able to reach a level of engagement in this country where perhaps, sir, people may see them as the institution of choice with which to do any business with. But in order to be able to get to that level and make sure, sir, that the appropriate not just regulation, but governance structures are in place, it is important, sir, that the movement now needs to start to reflect very carefully, sir, on how do you achieve a much whilst maintaining the principles of the movement, how do you maintain a much stronger corporate governance stance by being able to allow independent members, if you like, to improve the governance of some of the institutions. And I raise that specific issue, sir, because it is important that as we grow, and in the same way that we expect any business to grow, sir, and to be able to focus on achieving said growth, one must always accept, sir, that you don't always have all of the skills that you may require internally, which, as you know, sir, with most institutions, there are few people who tend to do the heavy lifting, sir. And it is important now that we look very carefully at how do we reorient the structures of the boards of credit unions, notwithstanding their bylaws with respect to membership and how that works. But in order to take on and to strengthen, what I would say, sir, is the architecture. Because with each juncture, sir, we must always pause and assess how best can we serve the interests, certainly, of ordinary Barbadians. And from a regulatory perspective, sir, we believe that in order for us to be able to lift not just the credit union movement, but certainly the domestic insurers, which we have, who have also done some acquisitions regionally as well, sir. We want to see these Barbadian businesses grow. And in seeing these Barbados businesses grow, as regulators, we must set the space for that growth and recognize that credit unions can acquire entities too, domestically or regionally or internationally. And therefore, our regulatory stance has to be supportive of that environment. And therefore, we've given, as the Minister, firm direction to both the Central Bank and the FFC, that as we transition to focusing on how do we use regulations for growth, that we equally strengthen, sir, down the line, the corporate governance structures of all of the institutions that they regulate. Because when, sir, any of my constituents or yours, sir, decides that they want to invest in something, they must feel a sense of comfort and trust with respect to not just the management of the institution, but the members of the board, if you like, sir, of said institution, that the regulators, sir, are actively on top of things and facilitating things, whilst keeping in mind, obviously, that there, as I said, sir, there are always risks. You can't mitigate all risks, but we can put a system in place that even if something happens, sir, that we can resolve quickly. And that, sir, is what is critically important as we move forward, not just with respect to how we deal with financial institutions, but it really, sir, it spreads across the rest of the economy, because if we are going to build out the economy and we're going to have an inclusive recovery, then where the rubber hits the road, sir, with respect to the provision and the access to financial services, it means that as citizens, sir, we must be engaged a little more, and the government is trying to build out its role with respect to the provision of better financial literacy in the first instance. But the financial literacy, sir, is only as good as the ability for it to influence, I think, positively your decision to make either an investment or to purchase a property or what have you, utilizing all of that. Because at the end of the day, I know that in this environment right now, people are looking for the fastest way, sir, to make some money. The fastest way to make some money. And the truth is, sir, many of my constituents have sent me many messages asking whether, Ryan, this true. And I have always said, sir, if it was true, I would got a little more here now. Because if the government had the capacity, sir, to be able to turn over as quickly and grow the purported returns that are always masqueraded on all of these programs of misinformation, sir. Because given that times are hard, people want to put in $1,000 and then in 2 weeks' time you get 8,000. Now, sir, I can tell you, if that was indeed possible, then the government of Barbados would be putting in the every 1,000 to get the 8. I ever had to hurt my head, sir, about COVID, ever had to hurt my head, sir, about trying to find money for the ELSA houses, because that is what we would be doing too. But I can only say to Barbadians that when you see these types of things being placed in front of you, and the truth is, sir, I have seen some wonderful YouTube presentations shared with people, but they all have the same underlying element. Put in some money with the promise of something in a short space of time. And I can only urge Barbadians to think 2 times, 3 times, sir, 4 times, as many times as you want before, sir, you put your hand in your pocket and give somebody this money, because chances are, sir, you will not see it again. And it is, that's what I'm saying, sir, the financial literacy is only as good as the next slick presentation, which somebody forwards you and swears, sir, and swears that they put in some money and they get money back. And the truth is that trust, because oftentimes, sir, you can recruit people to influence others, and that is how sinister some of these schemes can get, because you would recruit someone in this chamber, sir, you get them to put in the $1,000, give them back the 8 in 2 weeks, so that they will come and tell the rest of us in here, sir, that this thing true. And then all the rest of us are trusting that this thing happened, then go and put in the $1,000, and then off you go. And this is one of the areas, sir, that I know that it's a human thing to believe somebody who is close to you, and it is the most sinister thing, because the person is not necessarily aware that they are being used to propagate the very misinformation, sir, to the group, and therefore everybody is left wanting, but the person will swear, look, I put in this and I got back that, which is true. But the scam is always to get to the many. And it's those margins and rates of returns that the fraudsters, sir, are happy to perpetrate. And therefore, I say to people, if you do not see the underlying investment, the asset that this thing is going into, then chances are, sir, it is fraudulent. And I know it is a very emotive thing to react to these tales of advocacy that people may bring, but it is important to take that to heart, because once the money goes, sir, there's no FSC to go to, because the person is not regulated in the space. There's no central bank to go to, sir, because the person is not regulated in space. And chances are, by the time the police catch up, sir, the person abscond and gone already. And they move to another jurisdiction quite easily, or if it's being perpetrated online, which is much harder for persons to catch, then it means then that you then start to have to follow the breadcrumbs. But by the time you get to the end of the breadcrumbs again, sir, the person gone, because the identity and all of that is a very sophisticated setup. And all I can say to Barbadians, sir, is to pause with any of these fancy schemes. And the reality of all of this is that we have to pay very close attention to when we are starting to feel that sweet feeling, sir, before we part with our money, in order to make sure that we can protect ourselves. But the FSC is in the process, sir, of upgrading in terms of the structure, because we recognize that we need to get new skills in to help monitor some of these emerging trends and dynamics, because the truth is, sir, that when it was formed, it was a completely different space. And regulations, sir, as you know, will always tend to follow what the emerging technology is. But the one thing that is usually constant, sir, is the intent, which is usually fraudulent. And whilst we can, so we will remain absolutely vigilant, sir, within Barbados to ensure that we can protect Barbadians from fraud. But we can only protect Barbadians from fraud, sir, one, if they report the said fraud. And reporting, I know it may take some time because one has to investigate. You have to investigate. And part of the challenge sometimes is that people don't, because of the shame, don't come forward in sufficient numbers, sir, to be able to build the pressure in order to have a more positive outcome. And this is part of and parcel of what I would love to see as the change in culture, because when these things happen, sir, we need to know. We need to know the frequency in which it is happening, and to the degree that it is happening, in order to ensure then that from a regulatory perspective that we can take the appropriate action. And the truth is, sir, in all of this, clearly the Barbados Police Service will be a critical partner, because at the end of the day, if someone is operating outside of the regulatory environment, which is what the FSC is to govern, then the FSC can only give guidance saying that X person is not authorized to offer X product in the market. But if the FSC says that company X, sir, is not authorized to do business, and they close physically or otherwise, and then move the operation, sir, online through social media or whatever, sir, and at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning you get a nice presentation, and you see it, you're not remembering that the FSC said that this company or some variant of this company is not authorized. Then we need to make sure that people are aware and check first. So I would say to Barbadians, any opportunity when it comes to money, I will say, either call the central bank. It's a call. There's normally a list of companies authorized to operate under the Central Bank Act. There's a list of companies authorized to operate by the FFC. And if the company that is purporting to offer you this return, sir, if you don't see them listed on either of those websites, then I would caution, sir, not to do business with said people. Because if you choose to, then you do so certainly at your detriment. It then means, sir, that the police then has to try to go and find these people, because certainly the Central Bank or the FSC will have no information in relation to these people to even go and do an audit because they're not under their jurisdiction. They're operating outside of that framework, and then therefore it becomes a fraud police matter. And ultimately, chances are, sir, if people moving the way that they do these days, the money is lost. We are going to try our utmost best, sir, to build the most robust and competitive regulatory environment in Barbados. We want to encourage, sir, persons to invest, but invest in Barbadian companies, sir. Invest in Caribbean companies that we know, sir, and we can feel. And as we build new relations, sir, certainly with Latin America, and as well as businesses and companies in Africa and the Middle East, legitimate business information, sir, will be made available. And the extent to which I urge people to take this very seriously cannot be underscored. And therefore, our perspective in terms of how we use regulation to create opportunities for Barbadians to not just get a return on investment, but to get new jobs and new sectors built out, I think is important, sir, that we understand how that framework will be rolled out. And in a sense, sir, to be able to and I know that the Ministry of Energy and Business, sir, is working on how to deal with the junior market with respect to the stock market to get more capital mobilized. that is a function that falls under the ambit of the FSC to regulate. The reality is, sir, that there are many businesses in Barbados that are poised for expansion and growth, and we feel that this would be a credible opportunity for Bajans to be able to mobilize some of the resources that they do have in order to match tangible growth with tangible companies and tangible people in a way that makes sense. With respect to building out the economy. Now, sir, I want to lastly just remind the Chamber and the country, sir, because I've had in the last couple of weeks a few queries on this matter, and I remind the country through you, sir, that when the matters with CLICO, then ResLife, sir, were wound up in I think it was April 2020, if my memory serves me correct. April 2020 is when ResLife, sir, I think, came to its end with respect to administering the resolutions with respect to the CLICO policies. Now, the FSC, now that ResLife has been wound up, sir, the FSC has the responsibility for anybody who, for whatever reason, sir, did not get their bonds issued in 2019. So the FSC has the responsibility now for administering any of the persons who were the stragglers, I should say, sir, at that point. And therefore, I remind the public that any person who had a former CLICO policy, whatever the policy is, that you should make contact with the Financial Services Commission if you have not yet had your bonds issued in order to bring resolution to that matter. And the reality is that it took far too long, sir, as you know, almost 10 years before those people could get some measure of resolution. We came to office in some serious circumstances, and we dealt with that matter. And therefore, it is critical, sir, critical that for a functional economy, for an economy to be strong, you need a strong financial sector, but you need a financial sector, sir, that is linked very clearly to the real economy. The real economy where, sir, people are selling real goods and providing services in order to make sure that we can build out and maintain build out the businesses, as well as provide incomes that families in this country, sir, can support themselves. And in a sense, sir, the next phase of how we utilize, as I said, regulations for growth is not just, sir, to put monies into an account and leave it in the credit union or the banks. But certainly, sir, how do we create more wealth, opportunities for wealth? And the only way that you can do that, sir, is by mobilizing the resources to build out local companies, invest in tangible bricks and mortar activity, so that from one generation to the next, sir, that we would be doing right, certainly by our people. And that is the kind of regulation that we are going to be putting in place to ensure that we can build out these businesses, support families, and certainly, sir, make the economies much stronger. And so, sir, the two bills here, as I said, sir, relate to just regularizing the structure of the FSC board in terms of being able to ensure that the board will not have any issues if someone happens to be unavailable, to be able to regularize that matter, and then to validate the fee structure, sir, that has already been put in place to allow the fees to cover the operational portions of the FSC to be able to independently, sir, operate in a sense from government, and to be able to allow the FSC, sir, to transition and to provide more robust regulatory responses to the market, and therefore allow us to be in a position where we can transform the economy. And so, sir, with those few words, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
Honourable Member for Christchurch West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to enter into this debate. Now, first, Mr. Speaker, let me at the outfront say that I fully support both measures. Absolutely, it is important and critical that the structure of the board of the Financial Services Commission must be in a position to continue to function should one or other member not be available. And that the Director of Finance and Economic Affairs or his nominee can be positioned in that position on the Financial Services Commission. It's absolutely critical. And it's sad that obviously it was an omission and had to be corrected. And this is why we have a parliament, because we're here to bring laws, change laws, and improve laws as time goes on. In fact, when I think about a parliament and laws, I remember a very learned attorney told me that parliament is about changing laws. And if parliament was not about changing laws, we would probably still be in slavery today. And if you don't believe in that laws must be changed, then maybe you should still be in those mental, if not physical, shackles. So I fully agree and fully support that we had to make that law correct. The other part of it, the validation, obviously it cannot be that we've been collecting fees and not having the appropriate legislation in place. So therefore, as I've often said in here, Parliament can go forward in time, Parliament can go back in time, Parliament can make the illegitimate legitimate, and Parliament can do all sorts of things that otherwise no other entity or facility in the world can do. So this is a concept of Parliament actually going back in time, a validation bill, and making something that was wrong correct and putting it right and putting it in place. But I go further, because what we need to do is find a way, and it must be somewhere in the world, where fees can change or become up to date without having come to Parliament each time. And I'll give you an example. The cost of a license to do business for whatever reason, buy a liquor license for argument's sake. But 20 years ago, the cost of buying a liquor license may have been X dollars. But 20 years hence, it would not be fair to say that that cost should still be X dollars. So we as a parliament and we as a nation have to find a way that fees and licenses and the cost thereof progress with time without having to go through bill by bill by bill for each and every single one to be able to change the costs as they change due to inflation, due to changes in nature of business, cost of doing business, whatever it needs to do. Because if we imagine, Mr. Speaker, if we had to change every piece of legislation that related to a fee, how much time, how much cost in the Parliament would be taken up in doing that? So we have to find new ways to deal with how changes in fees are done, be it by regulation, be it by order, without having to come through this whole process. And this is something that I think should take on the attention of certainly the Chief Parliamentary Council and all the various ministries as we seek to find new ways and more efficient and appropriate ways of doing business in this country. Now, Mr. Speaker, let me say at the outset that I fully agree with the concept of pay-to-play. Now, the Financial Services Commission is a regulator, and it was set there to regulate how insurance companies and credit unions, banks, whatever, do business in this country. So it could not be that the taxpayers of this nation had to cover that cost. That cost had to be covered by those players in that market. And this is why the Financial Services Commission was set up in that way, so that those who want to play in that space have to pay for the regulation. It's just like if you go to a physician and you want to have a surgical procedure done, you would anticipate that the materials used will be included in the fees that you're going to be paying. It's the same concept of pay to play, and it's exactly how we should be doing business throughout this country, not only in Financial Services Commission, in the betting and gaming as well. And all of those other ancillary facilities that need regulation, that have to be regulated in a way that the average consumer is protected. from charlatans and sharks. And I'm going to get into the charlatans and sharks very, very shortly, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to get into that very shortly. Because we ain't got pals. We ain't got pals, and I can talk about that. But fair, it is always fair that people should pay to play. And if we have to have regulators in this space, then those people working in that space must pay for it. Now, Mr. Speaker, government, as I've said in this honorable chamber before, is a frill. I'm going to add, it is frills, and I'm going to add an S. And I explain to you why. Government is a facilitator. It facilitates people doing business and having things done and providing services. Government is a regulator. And this is what we're discussing now, the regulation of the Financial Services Commission throughout this country. Government is also an innovator. And we must innovate and bring innovations to the country so that our citizens can benefit. Government is a legislator. And this is actually why the Parliament is here and why the Parliament exists, so that we can put legislation in place unto which and through which our citizens and our businesses operate throughout this country. The S I have added, Mr. Speaker, is because government must also be a supporter. And I want to say that again. Government must be a supporter. Government has to support its citizens. Government has to support the people of this country. I heard the honourable member for Christchurch East Central spoke very eloquently and presented the bill. But he also mentioned Hurricane Elsa. And Hurricane Elsa devastated this economy and this country, with hundreds of houses being destroyed. But we as a government took on that we have to support those that lost their houses. We have to support those that had damage to their houses. In the same way, when we started the Financial Service Commission in this country, we had to understand that we had to support those people that had made that bad decision of investing in a company called Clico. Now, I know, Mr. Speaker, that I am not allowed to call the name Lawrence Dupre in your honourable chamber because I have not asked for permission. I know I'm not allowed to call that name at all.
If that's the case, then don't call it.
Right, I know I'm not allowed to call Lawrence Dupre at all, Mr. Speaker.
So don't mention it, honourable
Right.
member.
So therefore, and I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that people like that preyed on this nation, preyed on the people of Barbados, preyed on the people of the Caribbean, preyed on the people of Trinidad, to the amount of, in Trinidad alone, $3 billion US. $3 billion US in selling those things called flexible annuities. In Barbados, Mr. Speaker, in Barbados, they had $60 million in assets. $60 million. And sold flexible annuities to $407 million in Barbados and another $39 million in the OECS. Now, that's one thing if that company had to find that money to pay those back. But, Mr. Speaker, you will be surprised and amazed that the former Democratic Labour Party administration hoisted upon the people of this country that we, the taxpayers, have to find money to pay back $407 million that a man and his company preyed on the people of this country for. $407 million that Res Life has already issued in Series B bonds that the people of Barbados got to pay for. Mr. Speaker, $407 million, you know how much houses for people that could build? That's almost 4,000. It would be 8 times the effect of Hurricane Elsa. If Hurricane Elsa had 500 houses destroyed and 407 million could build 8,000 houses. And that's what we have had to take on because of the Democratic Labour Party committing to doing that and to supporting a company. Because you know why? People put friend before country. But let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, the Barbados Labour Party will never, ever, ever put friend before country. It is country, country, country. And I'm going to read an excerpt from the then member for St. Michael South, speaking in the March 16th estimates debate of 2011. Mr. Speaker, and I won't call the name from Short because I know you're not allowed to call it, and I wouldn't call it in here. The then member for St. Michael South, Mr. Speaker, said,
The then honourable member.
the then honourable member,
Yes, please.
I question how honourable he is today after seeing what has happened through CLICO. The then honourable member said, let me get the exact part. Okay, let me go to the thing. When I looked and saw some of the names of the institutions and so on that invested in that company, it is a matter for national concern. And we all have a vested interest in ensuring that issues surrounding CLICO are resolved to everybody's satisfaction. They never resolved them. He had an interest in resolving it, but it was left to the Barbados Labour Party to come and resolve it. I go on. It is not going to help the situation, as the honourable member for St. Joseph was just trying to do, to zero in on an individual and try to tie him up now with the honourable member for St. Michael Northwest. I won't talk about tie up. I won't talk about any kind of shackles nor nothing like that.
No, you can't.
No, I wouldn't talk. I was just recording what the member said about tying up.
There's certain things you
But I wouldn't
can't
talk
do.
about any of that.
I remember there's certain things you can't do if you're making a reference, and we all know that there's a matter before.
Correct.
The court,
Please. Yes,
please.
sir. Yes, Mr. Speaker. The minister, the former minister, no, I'm reading, this is the quote, the actual quote. The Minister of Finance, since there is nobody else to tie him up with, so you are trying now to find a new person to tie him up with. And the old dingy Barbados Labour Party politics, for which there is no place in Barbados anymore. Now, Mr. Speaker, maybe I should at this point stop and say the old dingy Democratic Labour Party as a total, of which there is no place in this Parliament for, and has not been for 2 elections. Maybe we should go there. But anyway, let us get past all of that and focus on trying to get the matter resolved so that the people in this country who are hurting can be relieved of their pain, the pain of the Democratic Labour Party. That is the pain that the people of this country... You know, Mr. Speaker, many of my neighbors, many of my friends invested their hard-earned money in CLICO and those flexible annuities. For years, could not get back a cent till the Barbados Labour Party came to office. For years, got all sorts of lip service from the Democratic Labour Party, including in this speech. All sorts of lip service, and could not get back a cent till the Barbados Labour Party came to office, restructured the debt, and you know what? Today, they're getting something. They're not getting all, they get them in bonds, but you know what? At least they got back something. Thanks to the Honourable Prime Minister and the Barbados Labour Party. They got back something. But I go on. The then member for St. Michael South says, I have something to lose, much to lose, if CLICO goes under. You know, and that makes me think, that member was thinking more of self and less of country. Well, I know of many members that got gratuity, former members in this house that got a gratuity and put it in CLICO and no glad to get them back something too. But they were not thinking about self. They were thinking about country and doing better for this country. But this is the most interesting part, Mr. Speaker. I have a vested interest in its recovery and success. It cannot help me to try to exploit some photograph that a journalist or some photographer secured for a newspaper with a member of this cabinet talking to the CEO of CLICO or whoever he was. He has been my friend for years. He was my client at one stage, and I do not disown him. He is not a leper. I do not agree with everything he does. I have never agreed with everything he has done, but like all other Barbadians, he has worked his way up. He has fallen. He's had his ups and downs, and he is in a down, but he is not a leper. He is my pal. So, a former prime minister of this country decides to wink at a pal doing nonsense to the detriment of the people of this country for $407 million at a time when they only had assets for $60 million. That is what a former prime minister, a former member for St. Michael South did to the people of this country. That's what he did. Because it was his pal and because he wasn't a leper. But Mr. Speaker, let me tell you something. We in this country are very, very aware and very, very astute. That company called CLICO was a wolf in sheep's clothing because it was doing hybrid. It had legitimate business, don't get me wrong. It had legitimate health insurance. It had legitimate property insurance. It had legitimate motor vehicle insurance. But underneath that sheep's clothing was the wolf that was gouging out and biting out people's necks and throat with those flexible annuities that caused people to lose millions of dollars. People went to their grave, Mr. Speaker, and never saw a cent. Sold hotels, Mr. Speaker, and put all the money in the hotel, from the hotel sale into that, and had to wait years to get back. It is an injustice. It is an injustice, Mr. Speaker, that the people of this country must never, ever, ever forget. And when you see taxpayers having to pay $407 million, and let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, a lot of people don't understand. And I am here to remind people, $407 million the taxpayers of Barbados have to look for to pay for that debacle and fiasco. When a former prime minister was only interested about flying boat on some way private jet. A lot of nonsense. No, man. The people of Barbados must remember, must understand that the Democratic Labour Party put us in this problem. They contributed to the lost decade. They contributed to us not seeing growth in this country. They contributed to a loss of confidence in our institutions. They contributed to hardship and death. And Mr. Speaker, Barbadians have been always accused of having short memories. But there's remember you at the right time. And to all those pretenders who think that they have an opportunity to come back and see this institution pulled down to the gutter like they did, they got another thought coming. Not as long as I have strength and breath in my body. I will stand in the breach and make sure that they will not reign in this country with the executive position again. Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged.
Honourable Member for Christchurch, East Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I can only commend the Honourable Member for Christchurch West for his very robust intervention. Sometimes I wish that I could respond in kind, but I always err on the side of your caution, sir, in relation to these matters. But I can tell you, sir, that these conversations are live across Barbados. And the extent to which we have had to clean up, sir, clean up really, is regrettable, because what it has meant is that each time we believe, sir, that we've crossed the river, there's something on the other side, sir, waiting for us. And the truth is that what the honourable member spoke to really relates to the fact that even now, as I indicated when it was wrapping up my presentation, is that it takes cash right now in a very constrained environment to continue to pay those persons who clearly were impacted by the lack of resolution from CLICO prior to us taking office. And it is important that Barbadians appreciate that we have had 4 very serious years. The first 18 months, as you are aware, Mr. Speaker, we were literally just restabilizing, if you like, the economic situation, part of which was to resolve the matter with CLICO, which really, sir, I think, as the honourable member quite rightly said, persons went to their graves really, sir, because of the distress that they were under financially, and no government that is self-respecting, in my view, sir, would oversee something like that. And the extent to which we have sought to bring some relief, sir, not just to those persons, but with respect to what's happened with COVID and everything else that's triggered since then, sir, this government, I believe, we have done a remarkable job in trying to respond to what clearly has been uncertain times under our tenure. But we do so, sir, because whilst we started out with very clear plans for execution, and we have, the challenges continue to confront us, but we stare them, sir, down, and we respond given the circumstances upon which we are ensuring that we do not allow, sir, any of these things to build up further, which would then cost somebody else down the road, sir, to so do. And so I welcome his intervention. It is a reminder to all Barbadians that ultimately, when it comes to regulation, that ultimately the government has the fiduciary responsibility at all times, sir, not just to put the systems in place, but if those systems, sir, don't work, then the government itself has to find a solution. And I believe that we have done so in as responsible a matter with respect to the wind-up of Res Life and bringing some important relief to those persons, because the truth is, sir, and the reality is that without that structure of response, I don't know where some of those people would be today, given the circumstances that certainly would have confronted us since that particular period of time. But I hope, sir, that we will never, ever have a government again in this country that will treat to its citizens in such a manner where they leave people out in the wind, sir, out in the wind, because they want to maintain personal friendships and not have the appropriate action taken to bring resolution to these matters. And so, sir, I'm grateful for the honourable member's intervention. It then just leaves me, sir, to beg to move that this bill be read, sir, a second time.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be read a second time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that you do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself in committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that the Speaker do not lose the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
This Honourable House is now in committee.
see in committee, right? Clause 1, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that clause 1 stand part.
The question is that clause 1 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that clause 2 stand part.
The question is that clause 2 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Chairman, I beg to move that you do not report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is, I do not report to His Honor the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee. Honorable members in favor, please say aye. Honorable members against, please say nay. Thinks the ayes have it.
The chairman of committees is reporting the passing of one bill in committee.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
Question is that the bill be read a third time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. Honorable member for Christchurch Central.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be now passed and cited as the Financial Services Commission Amendment Act 2022.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be passed and so cited. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited. Honorable member for Christchurch Central.
Order number 5, sir. In the name of the Honorable Minister in the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, to move the second reading of the Financial Services Commission Miscellaneous Provisions and Validation Bill 2022.
Honorable member for Christchurch Central.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a second time.
The question is that the bill be read a second time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that you do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself in committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
The Honorable House is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Chair, I beg to move that clause 1 stand part.
The question is that clause 1 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Chair, I beg to move that clause 2 stand part.
The question is that clause 2 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 3.
Chair, I beg to move that. I beg to move that clause 3 stand part.
The question is that clause 3 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 4.
Chair, I beg to move that clause 4 stand part.
The question is that clause 4 stand part. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
First schedule.
Chair, I beg to move that the first schedule be the first schedule to the bill.
The question is that the first schedule be the schedule of the bill. Honourable members in favor, please say aye. Honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Second schedule.
Chair, I beg to move that the second schedule be the second schedule to the bill.
The question is that the second schedule will be the second schedule of the bill. All honourable members in favor, please say aye. All members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Third schedule.
Chair, I beg to move that the third schedule be the third schedule to the bill.
The question is that the third schedule will be the third schedule of the bill. All honourable members in favor, please say aye. Honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Report.
Chair, I beg to move that you do not report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do not report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Chairman of committees is reporting the passing of one bill in committee.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be read a third time. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. Honourable member.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be now passed and cited as the Financial Services Commission Miscellaneous Provisions and Validation Act 2022.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be passed and so cited. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of the House until 5 minutes past 12.
The question is that this honourable chamber be suspended until 5 minutes after 12. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 5 minutes after 12. This sitting is resumed.
Order number 9, sir. In the name of the Honourable Minister of Housing, Lands and Maintenance, to move the passing of a resolution in accordance with Section 5 of the Crown Lands Vesting and Disposal Act, Chapter 225, to approve the vesting of the parcels of land situate at Sergeant's Village in the parish of Christchurch in this island, and more particularly described in the schedules, mainly for a public purpose, namely housing development.
Honorary member for St. George South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in the chamber, Mr. Speaker, to move the passing of a resolution in accordance with Section 5 of the Crown Land Vesting and Disposal Act to approve the land, some 7,021 square meters of land at Sergeant's Christchurch and in the National Housing Corporation for the purpose of housing development. And in November 23rd of last year, the Honourable House approved the compulsory acquisition of this parcel of land. They were in two parcels, one 122.2 square meters and the other 5,798 square meters, which give the total of 1.73 acres of land for the purpose of increasing the housing opportunities in Sergeant Village. And that is in the constituency of Christchurch West. And the honourable member for Christchurch West, who sits next to me, was the minister at the time on November 23rd when we had a debate with respect to the acquisition of this land. We are now debating the vesting of the land in national housing. Mr. Speaker, we know that we have a project over the next 5 years to build 10,000 homes for middle income and low income persons in this country. And this piece of land, this 1.73 acres of land, will provide some 9 duplexes and 2 single units. 9 duplexes, that's 18 houses, and 2 single units, make it 20 housing solutions within the constituency of Christchurch West. And I know the honourable member who sits next to me, the member for Christchurch West, will speak on this resolution. And it comes at a time, Mr. Speaker, when we have started the process of constructing the 10,000 homes. And, you know, when I look across at the member for St. Michael East, I recall him saying that I am not Houdini and that this is more than a mammoth task. But what I can say, Mr. Speaker, as I stand here with all honesty and my integrity intact, that we have land in this country to build more than 10,000 houses. And I spoke in this chamber earlier this year on derelict properties and vacant lots. The Ministry of Housing has prepared a paper for cabinet and is being vetted and discussed with the Attorney General before we bring it to Parliament to utilize, to see how best we can utilize without disadvantaging any landowner in this country who possesses vacant lots and who possesses derelict properties. There are some 15,000 derelict properties in this country and some 20,000 vacant lots. Give them, or 10,000 vacant lots, sorry, 25,000 properties in this country between derelict and vacant lots. And while the Attorney General is busy seeking to come up with the best possible legislation and policy decision to utilize these vacant lots and derelict properties, we are still in the process of well, AG, we're still in the process of constructing houses. And we saw at Vesper Gardens in the media recently visits by the Prime Minister, visits by me, the Minister of Housing, and visits by the Senior Minister responsible for infrastructure, where some 160 houses are being constructed. And we saw homeowners given the right to move into their homes when the time is right. A young lady, 30 years of age, and a civil servant, 38 years of age. And these persons earn between $2,000 to $4,000 per month net. And we're able to provide housing solutions for those persons, for teachers, policemen, nurses. And soon to be, there will be a discussion with the nursing council, whereby we will sit and give the opportunity to many civil servants, whether nurses, nurses assistant, general workers. We'll take them through the process to teach them or show them the way how to qualify for these homes with their salaries being within that bracket of $2,000 to $4,000. Mr. Speaker, this week, we intend to host a mortgage fair this weekend, where we will have the financial institutions take persons who we at National Housing would have pre-qualified to own their homes. And I just call that category of $2,000 to $4,000. But we also have a category of persons who earn net less than $2,000 per month, who will also qualify or pre-qualify through National Housing to own a home, whether it is a light gear steel structure, whether it is a wooden structure, or if it is a structure that is being built by National Housing. And we recognize from early that National Housing Corporation, despite we are vesting these lands in the National Housing Corporations, we must have partnerships in an effort to build out the housing stock that we have so articulated and promulgated, not only in our manifesto, but on these floors of Parliament, what we call the silent revolution. We will partner with, and we have started the process, we have formed a partnership with East West Barbados, where we are in the process of constructing light gear steel homes. The senior minister, I know he will speak on those later. And there are 150 houses to be built as a start in this year of light gear steel homes, utilizing some 103 foundations, because we'll be building duplexes and quadruplexes. And what we are seeing here that will be built on the lands at Sargent, 1.734 acres, will be duplexes. And they will be light gear steel homes, and then 2 single units. So we have some 20 housing solutions at Sargent. We are serious about constructing and building 10,000 homes. Soon to be at White Park Road, where we call Alleen's Court. By the end of October, and probably before, we will have some 20 units completed. And these are rental units, and persons within the city, persons within the other environs, close vicinity, St. Michael West, persons will be able to have the opportunity to own their own homes, beginning by renting these homes, these 20 units, and thereafter, at some point in time later, to be determined, we will see home ownership. And these are for persons who are probably below the 2,000 income group, and these are persons whose net salary are probably less than $1,000 and who can't afford to own a home at this stage, but they will start out by renting a home. And I am confident that our plan to construct 1,400 homes We are well on the way. In this financial year, 2022 to 2023, we are well on the way. And we have a target of 14,005. And I can say to you, Allen's Court, 20 quadruplex units, Parkland extension. We have just finished some 22 single detached units there. Coconut Hall in St. Lucie. And the honorable member for St. Lucie will be pleased to know that next Friday, we'll be journeying to Coconut Hall with the member for St. Lucie to let the people know that we are very serious about building some 22 units, 4 duplexes, and other singles, 14 singles, and 4 duplexes. And the honorable member will be there to witness the infrastructural works, the groundbreaking for the infrastructural works, started by the good member for Christchurch West. And by the end of this financial year, the member for St. Lucie will have at Coconut Hall a mixture of like Gay Steel Homes by a partnership between National Housing Corporation and East West, and also a partnership between National Housing and Joe Villa, which are wooden homes. And the people of St. Lucie will be pleased to know that that is within the first year of construction. And we have started. So those persons who get on the airwaves, the pundits and the naysayers, and who say that we can't build 10,000 houses, tell them, as the young man will say, look out, watch out, because we have started. And we are coming to St. Andrew also. We'll be in St. Philip, St. Thomas, Farmers, Leadville, Christchurch, Applewood and St. George, Rices and St. Philip. Only last week, the member for St. Philip South and I had a conversation where he has allocated persons from St. Philip to occupy those units at Rices, some 11 units at Rices. But we're not finished there. Todd's. And I heard the member for St. Peter, but I can't do it all today. But rest assured that within the next few months, you'll be able to tap these chambers on and even jump up. I don't want you to breach the rules of the house by jumping up, but I know you will be happy member for St. Peter very soon. So keep your hands down, and I know coming very soon. Westers Endurance. We have some 56 units to be built there. Thousand St. George, those 15 have finished. And, you know, I want to thank the member for Christchurch West. He was the minister of housing then, and he was able to construct even before sergeants. I'm doing sergeants for the member, but he did TOS for me, and I want to thank him. Those 15 units at TOS, they're occupied by people from St. George North and persons from St. George South. And we were able to provide these 15 housing solutions thus far for the people of St. George. But, Mr. Speaker, I just want to add that we have at NHC designs approved for housing projects. We have infrastructure works approved. I think we'll be awarding tenders shortly for infrastructure works at Concordia Gardens. And those houses, I am looking for the number of houses that will be built in Concordia Gardens. Some 48.4 acres. And this will come in year one. We will start the construction of 60 single detached units, 20 duplexes is 84. 94 single detached and 20 duplexes at Concordia Gardens. And we'll be approving tenders. National Housing Board will be approving tenders to get the road infrastructure started, the road work started within the next month. Clifton as well, Coconut Hall in St. Lucie, Branchbury Ginger Works in St. Joseph, and a few more road works are expecting to commence in several of these areas within the next 4 to 6 weeks. But we recognize that in an effort to build 10,000 homes, infrastructural works consumes the most time in housing development. And working jointly with Tongue and Country Planning Division. Tongue and Country Planning Development. No call planning and development. Thank you, Senior Minister and Member for Christchurch West. We work closely to ensure that Town and Country Planning Development, Town Planning Development, and the Ministry of Housing work assiduously to get these infrastructural works completed. Because without infrastructure, we can put up houses, but what type of housing we're going to have? What type of infrastructure we'll have? Water, road infrastructure, which is critical, lighting. These are some of the things we need to do before we can build homes. And those are the works that we are embarking upon at this stage at Concordia Gardens in St. Philip, Coconut Hall in St. Lucie, Branchbury in St. Joseph, and a few others. Mr. Speaker, the Hope Inc. was formed, a commercial state-owned entity, to construct homes in this country for the income category 2,000 to 4,000. And we recognize, and I said in this chamber, that we have some teachers who earn just over 4,000, and soon to come back to Parliament and to Cabinet would be a paper to approve the increase of this net income from 2,000 to 4,000 to 2,000 to 5,000, so we can accommodate some teachers who just fall outside the 4,000 bracket. And I just want to say to you, this has already been approved by the Prime Minister verbally, and she has asked that we bring it back to Cabinet so we have formal approval, and thereafter we are on our way again. But the Hope Inc., in that category, 2,000 to 4,000, soon to be 2,000 to 5,000, will be constructing some 800 homes this year. And they've started, like I said, 160 units at Vesper Garden. They've started at Pool, and the member for St. John, I know he's happy. He visited some months ago to see the infrastructure work started, and he's very happy. We are doing some 201 single detached units with townhouses at Pool, and on some 23.1 acres. And we will finish these by March 2023. So when persons say that we can't build 10,000 houses, I continue to repeat that it is doable. So what I have here, being built by the Hope Inc., 160 units at Vesper Gardens, 201 units at Pool in St. John, 90 units at Colleton in St. Lucie. So the member for St. Lucie, you are getting your fair share. Then Hope Premium now, where we're looking at above the 5,000 brackets. On some 30 acres of land, they have started building single detached units, and thus far they have built over 35 single detached units, and of the 200 units to be built, 100 units will be built in this financial year, and that is to cater to those persons earning over $5,000, and we call it Hope Premium. So, Mr. Speaker, these lands to be vested in national housing at Sargents were formerly owned by Miss Marjorie Payne and Miss Jermaine Atkins, and they are shown on a plan by a land surveyor dated August 26, 2021, and they're recorded at the Lands and Surveys Department in September 2021. And I want to say also, Mr. Speaker, I forgot the East-West project at Hackett Hall, because the member for St. Michael East will be pleased to know, and I know the member for Christchurch West will speak on this. He just showed me photos of, those are quadruplex units at Hackett Hall. There's some 3 quadruplex units at Hackett Hall. There are 12 units in all, if you want. Quads are 4, so 3 quads give 12 single units in the constituency of St. Michael East. And I'm sure that is all for now, but we are coming back to you, member for St. Michael East, with duplex units on the other side once we put in the road infrastructure. So you can get ready to send your people to national housing, member for St. Michael East, because they have to come in and pre-qualify, if you want to use that term, because we have to take them through the process of letting them know, in order to get the mortgage certificate, what they're entitled to, how they will be paying the mortgage companies. But I don't want to forget, we are utilizing photovoltaic at Vesper Gardens. No, I call that satisfying my colleagues and the people of this country, because we are not building homes in one area like Sergeants, but we are going all over Barbados, in St. Philip, Christchurch, the city, St. John. We are building homes across Barbados, St. George, so that every single constituency will see a housing development and housing unit, not only for working class people, but for middle income people and upper. So we are catering to all categories in this country within the housing stock. We have to enfranchise our people. It is often good to say, own a piece of this rock. But there are persons who own a piece of this rock for years, but were not able to own a home. Remember, for St. Philip South, you know, there are many persons who own a piece of this rock, but they were not able to own a home. And I think owning a home is better than owning a piece of this rock. Because at the end of the day, you need some place to raise your children, to teach them. When the member for St. Philip West, when they leave the schools, they have to go home. It didn't stop there. So you need a home so they can do their homework, where you can feed people. We don't want persons only to be fed in shelters, but you need a home where we can raise children. And that is the foundation for our future, our children. So we have to construct these homes with a view that Barbados, we are preparing Barbados for 50 years down the road and beyond, because that's when our children will become members of parliament. And if we don't have good infrastructure, then we will witness a decay in our society. So we need a good housing stock as part of our development thrust, and also to put people back to work. We have employed over 250 contractors to put people back into their homes after the freak storm and Hurricane Elsa. I know we have been criticized for it, and I said recently at not Rock Hall, I remember for St. Philip, where is that event that I spoke? Work Hall, thank you. I spent a lot of time in St. Philip South. My good friend and parliamentary colleague, you know, I try to make sure he's looked after. He looks after me as well. We have good times in St. South as well as St. Michael East. And I went to Work Hall, where we witnessed 2 homes being rebuilt from Hurricane Elsa. People can say that we have not done this work fast enough, but this is the first time any government in the history of politics in this country, or government in this country, have undertaken to rebuild 1,704 houses that were damaged by a hurricane at a cost of over $100 million. And if you check the history of hurricanes and the time taken to rebuild homes, you'll see that 14 months is the average to rebuild a home after a hurricane has struck a country. 14 months. And we have gone 12 months thus far. And while we can question whether we could have done better, some are saying we could have done better, but we have employed over 250 local contractors, persons. We didn't bring in anybody to construct or reconstruct those houses that were damaged from Hurricane Elsa. What we have done, though, we have some 42 that we will replace through that partnership of East West and National Housing, 42 homes. And persons whose homes cannot be repaired will get, those persons have signed up for East West homes, which are like gear steel homes. And I go there because we're embarking on a 10,000 housing, 10,000 silent revolution, building 10,000 homes in this country over the next 5 years. But we are also mindful, and people have to understand that while we are doing that, we are also repairing 1,704 homes across 3 agencies: Urban Development Commission, Rural Development Commission, and National Housing Corporation. You can research the archives. You can look at Hansard and you can tell me, Mr. Speaker, I have the right to do that as well. Where in the history of this country have you rebuilt and repaired 1,704 homes at a cost of $100 million by any administration? And I want to congratulate the Prime Minister for taking up this task of repairing these 1,704 homes and rebuilding. Because out of the 1,704, I think it's a 60-40 split in terms of rebuild and repairs. But, Mr. Speaker, I don't want to spend the entire day because we're going to have a number of housing resolutions, land acquisition resolutions to speak on in this lower chamber, because as we build out the housing stock in this country, 10,000 houses, we have to acquire lands. So land acquisition, we have one here, again, soon to be read in this parliament, land being acquired at Vesper Gardens. And I will be coming to St. George shortly. We will be discussing land acquisition at Brighton, Lower Brighton in St. George, where we will be constructing some 49 units there as well. So, Mr. Speaker, I just want with those words to beg that this resolution now pass. I'm obliged.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until 2 p.m.
The question is that this honourable chamber be suspended until 2 p.m. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 2 p.m.